So it should be good, I believe. And again, this is the Waukesha FCT, which is the FAA contract tower, air traffic control, the basics. As I said, I'm Andy Groth. I'm the air traffic manager. And just a brief history about myself. I began.
Sorry, Andy, we're not seeing the presentation. Can you try sharing your screen again?
Yeah, hold on a second. Sorry. How's that? How about now?
There you go. Now we got you.
Okay. And let me see here. There. Still seeing it?
Yep.
You see the presentation?
So we see the presenter view where it has next slide and your notes and stuff.
Okay. Well, we'll change that. There you go. All right. We're going to be using two computers here, so. All right. So again, better. I started my career in 1998, joining the United States Navy. I served at two naval air stations, Zadak, Alaska, and Barbers Point, Hawaii, neither of which exist any longer. After separating from the Navy, I joined the team here at Waukesha as a controller in 1998. Eventually was promoted to air traffic manager. I was fortunate enough to be selected for an area manager position with my company, which I'll explain more on a little later. So as an area manager, I managed multiple towers. In fact, began by managing 46 towers. And eventually was promoted to the Director of North American Operations, where I directly managed 91 facilities, 91 towers, including one facility in Canada and Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. This last year, middle of 2020, I decided to return to my ATM position at Waukesha, and I'm truly glad to be back. All told, I have 28 years of experience in ATC. So when I mentioned that we're an FCT, or FAA contract tower, the FAA contract tower program, of which Waukesha is a part of, it's a public-private partnership. It began in 1982 and has grown over the years. The program was born out of the necessity because of the infamous controller strike of 1981, when President Ronald Reagan subsequently fired many of the controllers that were striking. What it did was it created a need at the smaller, more rural airports for staff that the FAA was unable to provide, so they contracted out to the different companies. And at the original onset of the project, all the towers are managed individually. Now they've been broken into geographical regions. So there's currently 256 airports in the program. That's fully half of all control towers in the United States are run by contract tower companies. The facilities have been broken, as I said, into geographical regions. 3 major companies manage these varying areas. They include Serco, North America, RVA, and of course, Midwest ATC Service, who we work for. Midwest ATC currently handles 91 towers in the program in the central, eastern, and western Pacific areas, including 9 towers in Wisconsin, all the towers in Wisconsin, with the exception of Green Bay, Milwaukee, and Madison, which are operated by the FAA. The interesting thing about the FCT program is the FCTs, they actually handle 29% of all the U.S. The air traffic in the U.S., but they only account for 11% of the FAA's overall operating budget. So it's very cost effective. And one of the things that I'm very proud of, 70% of all FAA FCT controllers are actually veterans. This is just a quick hit on some of the benefits of the FCT program, and of course, it obviously enhances aviation safety. They offer a cost-saving option for staffing many of these towers, and continue providing service to rural areas which otherwise may not be able to afford this type of service. We obviously encourage the retention of essential commercial air services by offering this added layer of safety. And by and large, we provide a great deal of support for various aviation activities critical aviation activities which occur at these smaller airfields, which include military training, disaster relief, law enforcement activities, pilot training, and so on and so forth. And as you see, they consistently receive high marks for customer service. Interesting, everyone in the FCT program, we operate under all of the same standards, medical and procedural as the FAA. We're under the same oversight, so it's a seamless process. So if you want to become a controller, some basic requirements that you need to meet in order to be considered for a controller position. Obviously, you need to be a U.S. citizen. And this is directly for FAA hiring. You have to be age 30 or under. You have to pass a medical examination, pass a security investigation, and you have to be able to speak English, at least clearly enough to be understood. Further, the FAA requires having 3 years of progressively responsible work experience or a bachelor's degree or some combination totaling three years. There are many options for your training and qualifications to become an air traffic controller. First and foremost, the option of joining the U.S. military. ATC is offered as a career field in each and every one of the branches of the U.S. military. It's an excellent way to obtain the training and satisfy the experience requirements. Additionally, there's a newer initiative called the College Training Initiative, specifically the Air Traffic College Training Initiative. We refer to these as the Control Tower Institutes, which there are currently 37 approved throughout the United States. Some examples would be Embry-Riddle University, St. Cloud State University, and University of North Dakota that all offer programs. There are approved schools that offer programs with specific ATC coursework, and it'll prepare you for this career. You also can get hired directly by the FAA, which we refer to as an off-the-street hire. That's no experience. Generally, you're going to require the bachelor's degree in this situation. The FAA will do past hire experiences where they require at least 52 weeks of experience in order to be considered. And specifically to the FCTs, such as Waukesha, any FCT hirees are required to already have a valid control tower operator's license and have no less than 1 year experience on that license. So there's no way to be hired off the streets for the FCT, so you'll have to take one of the other avenues to obtain your licenses and qualifications. So some of the basics of air traffic control, the most basic is the National Airspace System consists of several different airspace designations with varying types of control and flight rules. They're depicted on this slide. You'll see the top level, the Class A, is 18,000 feet above mean sea level, up to flight level 600, which is 60,000 feet. Generally, that airspace is going to be handled by air route traffic control centers. There are 21 in the United States. They are literally just a radar facility that handles everything. Actually, it starts generally at 10,000 feet. You see you've got Class B, Class C, Class Delta. Class B and Class C would be more of O'Hare, LAX, New York, Milwaukee. Waukesha specifically is Class Delta airspace. And Class Delta airspace is commonly known as control tower or tower airspace. As you see in this depiction, this is from our VFR sectional. Waukesha County lies within the Class Delta airspace as it is equipped with an operating control tower. The dashed blue line you see there with a little cutout, as we call it for the Capitol Drive Airport, depicts the outer perimeter, which you'll see on the next slide here is roughly a 4.6 nautical mile radius. So Waukesha Control Tower handles from the surface to 2,500 feet and a 4.6 nautical mile radius with the exception of the cutout for Capitol Drive. Let's see here. Some of the rules for Class Delta airspace include a speed limit for aircraft of 200 knots of airspeed, and also the requirement to establish and maintain two-way radio communications. And further, the VFR weather minimums, this refers to visual flight rules. This is a majority of our training operations, and majority of operations occur under VFR, visual flight rules. You have to have at least 3 statute miles of visibility and over 1,000-foot ceiling in order to be to utilize visual flight rules. Otherwise, you're under instrument flight rules, and you're flying under instruments and radar control, generally under the control of Milwaukee Tracon, who is our overlying facility. So I want to show you the basic air traffic patterns. Waukesha County Airport has 2 intersecting runways. We have 1028 and 1836. This is our north-south and east-west runways. It offers flexibility to operate as directly aligned to the wind as possible. We utilize a basic racetrack pattern while controlling aircraft, whether arriving, departing, or remaining in the local area for training and maintenance purposes. Now, this illustration indicates the basic legs of this racetrack pattern and recommended entries, departures from this pattern. You can see that it can be applied to any runway, regardless of the direction or configuration. So you'll see following along the runway of intended flight is called your upwind leg. When they make the left turn, in this case, the left turn, that's called your crosswind. Then when they fly the reciprocal of the runway, the parallel reciprocal, they're in the downwind. Then they'll make a turn and intending landing. That's called a base. And the final turn is just that. It's called the final. So again, that's just a basic description of that's at the heart of a lot of what we do. We utilize that for all of our operations. So now in Waukesha, we have 2 basic control positions, 2 main operating control positions in Waukesha. The first being local control. This is also known as tower. Local controller is responsible for aircraft in the airspace and utilizing the active runway or runways. The local controller issues landing and takeoff clearances, provides traffic advisories. We coordinate with the overlying IFR authority. As I said, in this case, it's Milwaukee Tracon. Milwaukee's terminal radar approach control is who handles all traffic, IFR traffic in and out of Waukesha, and so a lot of coordination is required. And they also coordinate with ground control for the use of other movement areas on the airport. The second position is ground control position. The ground control position is responsible for all airport movement areas other than the runway that's currently in use. They issue taxi clearances, both inbound and outbound. And they also control vehicular traffic on the airport. They issue IFR clearances, and they maintain the ATIS. The ATIS is the Automated Terminal Information Service. I'll explain that in a later slide. However, that is a means of communicating vital information, vital weather, and pertinent aviation information to pilots. So to speak basically on ATC communication, communicating with air traffic control is a basic function of any ATC environment. Controllers accomplish what they do by issuing control instructions to pilots. The pilots confirm the instructions issued, and then they comply and carry out the instruction. Therefore, the controller and the pilot have to have a meeting of the minds on every instruction issued. Without this, ATC plan will not go accordingly, and there will be issues with safety or at least efficiency. It's okay to say, I do not understand your instructions. This is something that I'd like to interject just for any of our pilot friends listening. We're there to help. The tower is there to help, but it's imperative that you understand our instructions and comply. So it's a pilot's responsibility to ensure you're confident in your understanding of the instructions provided by the controller. If you're unsure, ask. Ask them to repeat, ask them to clarify prior to acting. Guessing is no way to operate in a fast-paced and safety-critical airport and airspace environment. When you guess and you guess wrong, that's when there's problems. Some other best practices. Bottom line, we pay for air traffic services with our taxes, so why not get your money's worth? ATC can be that extra set of eyes for you. They're that extra safety net, and they're just that. They're there so they see the whole picture while you're operating within your aircraft. One of the recommendations is always contact the tower 7 to 10 miles from the airport. This allows for establishment of the required communication and instructions to be issued for you to enter a pattern prior to you entering the airspace. There's a lot going on within that 5 miles or 4.6 miles. And so you want to be able to have afford the controller an option to an opportunity to provide you with those necessary instructions prior to entering that airspace. As it says here, 15 miles or farther out, radar services are by approach control or center may be more appropriate. So as I mentioned before, we have a system at Waukesha called the Automated Terminal Information Service. It's a very important service. It's a continuous broadcast of pertinent information for the pilot, including current weather, runway in use, approach in use, any notices to airmen, which are referred to as NOTAMs, and other information critical to safe operation. It is essential to receive the ATIS recorded message prior to contacting a control tower, whether you're taxiing out or whether you're inbound. Always give the phonetic letter to the controller on initial contact. This is the way that the ATIS broadcasts, as they are updated, are identified by a phonetic alphabetical letter. So you would report in that you have information alpha, or you have information delta, and so on and so forth. This informs the controller that you have the current weather, runways in use, hazards such as birds or hazardous weather advisories, and the NOTAMs that affect the airport. Pilots must confirm acknowledge receipt of the ATIS information, or they will be challenged by the controller. It is imperative and it is a requirement that the pilots have that issued information. And if they do not acknowledge or confirm, the controllers will verify. So one of the things I'd mentioned that the local controller does is they issue landing clearances. And landing clearances are not just a simple clear land. We have several types of landing clearances. Any clearance is exactly that. It's a clearance guaranteeing that the runway assigned is clear of aircraft, personnel, vehicles, and to the extent known, animal and bird activities. Precisely the purpose of having a tower is to confirm and verify that the safety and the clearing of that runway. Pilots at towered airports are prohibited from entering and landing on a runway without specific clearance to do so. So landing clearances are always specific. They describe a precise action that the pilot can do. For example, if a pilot is clear for a touch and go, the pilot cannot do a stop and go without first requesting that action. It's what's expected is they're expected to conduct what they are cleared for. So the different types of clearances we have a cleared to land. That's a specific clearance where the pilot's authorized to land on the aircraft on a specific runway with the intention to complete a full stop landing. So you're going to land and turn off. Cleared for touch and go. This is a clearance to land on the assigned runway and continue to depart without stopping. This is used a lot with practice aircraft or training aircraft. You're able to get an approach, and a landing, and a departure all in one. There's also cleared to stop and go. This is clearance to land on a runway, come to a complete stop, and with the minimum time initiate a departure. Next, you have cleared for low approach. Now, this is a clearance to make an approach to an assigned runway, but not physically touch the runway. Pilots may overfly that runway at any altitude up to pattern altitude. Now, there is an exception here. ATC may issue a restriction, altitude restriction for safety purposes, and it would become in the form of an at or above altitude. So you would conduct that low approach at or above whatever restricted altitude you were issued. Finally, there's the missed approach go around. Now, this action can be taken by the pilots without a clearance. This can also be a practice for unsafe conditions. It's the one type of approach a pilot need not obtain a specific clearance to initiate. Simply execute a go around and safely configure the aircraft in a straightforward climb. Inform the tower once it's safe for you to do so, and if necessary, get further instructions. And the last but not least is cleared for the option, used heavily in training as well. This affords the pilot the opportunity to execute their choice of the above mentioned landing clearances or approaches. It isn't necessary for a pilot to tell the controller about a full stop when cleared for the option. You may do so, but it sometimes is helpful, but it's not required. So when you're cleared for the option, you may choose to full stop, to touch and go, stop and go, low approach, or missed approach. Another best practice here has to do with runway exiting upon landing. And here's a few of the don'ts. Do not stop on a runway to get exit instructions. So once arrival, making an arrival, once you land, turn off the runway at the earliest turn possible that is not a runway, because the next one is, unless directed by or approved by ATC, never exit onto an intersecting runway. That runway may be active and another aircraft may be using it. We see jet pilots try this here a lot at Waukesha, especially when they're landing runway 10. It's a natural turnoff point. It's a wider surface than taxiway Bravo or Charlie, and naturally they'll want to turn. However, that intersecting runway happens to be in use a lot of the time. So, and then finally, do not exit and taxi to parking without receiving clearance. It's expected that you turn off, you exit the runway safety area, you come to a complete stop, and contact ground or wait for instructions from local control. Next, we have hold short instructions. Hold short instructions are issued when a runway cannot be entered or crossed. This pertains to both vehicles and pilots. Pilots and vehicle operators need a specific clearance to cross or enter any runway. Operators must also read back the clearance to hold short with the aircraft vehicle or vehicle call sign. Controllers are required to challenge pilots and vehicle operators for a readback if not received or received correctly. It's always best to read back hold instructions verbatim. Let me see here where we at. So I just want to open it up to the floor for any questions, comments.
Thank you, Andy.
Yep. I'm gonna stop share.
Yep, sounds good.
And then do I have to make you host, or you take it back?
I think I can reclaim it.
Okay.
Then I can turn my video back on. That'll be exciting. There we go. Now we're back in business. All right. Thanks, Andy, very much for giving us good information. I think that was excellent. Starting to get some questions in. We have one from Brian. He asks, how does EAA Oshkosh affect you? Do any of the rules change?
That's a good question. None of the rules change. What it does is it increases our, obviously a lot of our traffic. We get a general traffic increase at Waukesha, but what it does is it increases the traffic in the airspace itself. A lot of aircraft transitioning to and from Waukesha, so it requires an increased and heightened awareness by us, but no rules change for us per se. That's interesting too, Oshkosh, and you may not know this, or you may know this. Oshkosh is part of the FCT program as well, so therefore it's staffed by private contract controllers. However, for the duration of the EAA show itself, so approximately 10 days or 12 days, I believe, the FAA takes over the tower and they staff it with their own cadre of, I believe, 30 or 40 controllers. So it's quite, as you know, it's the busiest airport in the United States or in the world for that period under normal circumstances. But no, our rules don't change at all. But it definitely it makes it interesting because of the increased traffic and density within the airspace. Specifically, Badger being on the northwest corner of our airspace. That's a big transition spot. So we have numerous aircraft that are going from south to north that believe they're skirting our airspace, or they may be skirting our airspace. However, runway 10, the ILS approach is right through that corridor. And so it creates some interesting situations without the heightened awareness.
For sure. Thanks for the question, Brian. I actually had a question, Andy, on overflights. So I think you covered it, but our Class Delta airspace goes up to 3,500 feet.
Right, AGL.
AGL, yep.
I'm sorry.
So how do overflights affect our traffic count, or how many do we have? Do we get more overflights than we have actually airplanes coming in, or coordination with Milwaukee? How does that work?
I believe that we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10% of our traffic is overflights. We deal with overflights every day. Again, we're just a busy corridor here, particularly during Oshkosh. Thankfully, we have a STARS radar in the tower. That's a standard terminal radar replacement system. So it's a digitized radar that is slaved off of Milwaukee, the main radar in Milwaukee. However, it affords us a increased situational awareness in the tower. So it allows us to monitor those transitions. And generally, what we do is we're going to give transitions and restrict them to be at or above 500 feet above our standard pattern altitude. And it kind of builds in that natural separation, but we're still issuing traffic advisories and traffic alerts.
Interesting. Another question from Brian here. He says, how about wings over Waukesha? So I'm interpolating a little bit because it's on chat, but if we have special events here, how does that affect your workload?
So obviously it does impact us. Again, we have to have increased awareness. We may perhaps increase staffing in the tower. Now, if it's a true air show where you have demonstration type activities or other groups like that, we generally the tower will cede control of the airspace to a air boss, and the airport has used an air boss in the past. Essentially, it closes the airport to non-participating aircraft, and all the coordination is done by an individual, as a non-ATC individual. They may have an ATC background, but they're non-ATC. It's basically the rules kind of go out the window, but coordination is done through that individual, and the airspace, for all intents and purposes, is closed. So the tower has no jurisdiction. But now during a normal increased activity because of wings over Waukesha, let's say it's display aircraft coming in. We even do it for EAA, for the Young Eagles operations. We love to have prior coordination with those operators and with those organizers because it gives us a heads up. We can also build in some processes and procedures that will help the normal operating aircraft work well with the event aircraft.
Excellent. I got a question from Chris. It says, for UAS or UAV operations, we'll shortcut and call them drones, non-commercial treetop and below operation within 5 miles of the field. It says, I must call ATC. And is this a quick, yeah, go ahead, or no, not right now conversation? Or is this something to be requested a day, a week, a month ahead? And how annoying is this to ATC? Well,
first of all, it's not annoying. It's a necessary, and actually, if the restriction or the requirement that you have is to coordinate and with the tower, we want that for a reason, and we'd like it just prior to your operation. For the most part, it's so that we know that you're there, and then we can advise aircraft or have them avoid the area. We do participate in the Lance program. And that's a low altitude alert and notification system. So it's an automated system. So each airport has created a grid that has each section of the grid. We have a maximum altitude that we've allowed without coordination, without prior approval, and that's up to 400 feet. So when you go on the Lance and you apply for approval, if you're within the parameters of that section, so for example, if it's a 400-foot section, you're operating below 400 feet, there's no coordination necessary. It will coordinate, the coordination will be completed through the Lance program. But we do want the call. We do generally like the call, particularly if you're in an area. For example, we've had aircraft or drones operations just immediately south of the field for the purpose of survey activity, things like that. We will specifically avoid that area or be able to advise our aircraft of potential drone activity. Otherwise, if it's reported to us and you haven't called, there's a potential that we will report it as an unauthorized drone activity just for the fact of not knowing.
And I'll echo that too, if I can put my sense in. Coordination with drone operators is extremely critical. We have an entire section on our Facebook page about education for drone operators to make sure that we're getting the information out and we're connecting with you. You guys are operating in our airspace. We want you to enjoy what you're doing, but we also don't want to have any incidents. So, Brian asks, are you aware of any volunteer opportunities at Kreitz Field?
Specifically not in the tower. We, unfortunately, Midwest ATC doesn't have any type of intern, or although I will tell you that you're welcome to coordinate with me for a tour of the tower. You're welcome to come up and watch the operation. But as far as volunteering, I'd probably have to defer that at the airport itself. I'd have to defer to Kurt.
We have a bunch of different groups. We have the Commemorative Air Force, potentially an EAA chapter coming up soon. And if we have any events, we're always looking for volunteers. I believe on our webpage, we also have an events section, or I think we call it Get Involved. So go on there. You get to learn about the Waukesha Aviation Club, which we highlighted yesterday, and the opportunities that exist within that club. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities. It's not a consistent opportunity, but if you get in touch with one of our club members or our office, we'll be able to get you hooked up with someone who can get you on the airfield and volunteering to your heart's content. Those are all the questions I see in chat. Give people just another minute or so to throw one in if they have it. Andy, are you able to share your email address in the chat box if anybody else has specific questions for you? That'd be great. I just wanted to thank again, Andy. It's pretty amazing being around the air traffic controllers. They're really good when you're up there, depending on how busy the airspace is. They talk at 30 knots with peak gusts to 90 knots, depending on the traffic operation. So thanks.
Our spouses say the same thing. So,
so great information. Just as a reminder, we're doing this, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you didn't see it, we're doing this the rest of the week. So tomorrow is Atlantic Aviation. They're going to be talking about more of the service side of the industry, hanging airplanes, moving them around, fueling them, providing catering, cars, basically anything that when the pilots or crew or passengers get here, the Atlantic Aviation takes care of them. Commemorative Air Force is going to be on Thursday. They're a World War II and vintage aircraft operator that participates a lot in our events, like Food Truck Friday, they'll come out and fly, or the Wings Over Waukesha are special events. And then on Friday, we have the Midwest, boy, he just renamed his, but I know him as Midwest Aerial Services. So it's Cody Retlich. He's going to talk about drone operations, UAS, UAV, anything to do with getting a remote vehicle up in the air and actually using it in our airspace. He's done presentations out here before, just fantastic. So check out our Facebook page. We're posting our videos every day. Appreciate you participating today. Big thank you again to Andy at Midwest ATC Services and also to Stein Aircraft Services. Look forward to seeing you again very soon. Have a great day.